Good evening, folks. Welcome back to Celtic Fans TV. We are here for the transfer show, and we're going to talk about all the incoming and outgoing deals that Celtic are working on at the minute. I've got Kevin and Stuart with me for this one. First on the agenda tonight is Alexandro Bernabei. I spoke to Wanarango about him last week. It looks like he passed his medical over the weekend ahead of signing what is rumoured to be a 5-year deal. Stuart, we'll start with you tonight, mate. What do you make of that bit of recruitment, and when do you think we'll get official confirmation in it?
I'm hoping it's going to be this week. I've not heard anything in that regard, but hopefully it's going to be soon, because I think everybody just wants to get another one over the line. I think it would give a wee bit of reassurance. I think especially Angie's team, I'm really excited to see if we get a better quality of fullback in, what we can actually do. Particularly in that left-hand side, I think there's room for a player that's got a bit more going forward, which hopefully Bernabei, it sounds like he does have a bit of that about him. So that's something that gives me a bit of excitement. But again, it's tempered with the South American, Scotland. Like that's an experiment that's not gone too well in the past. So hopefully he kind of bucks that trend and comes in and can really affect things. But I think Ange plays a style of football, Ange Postecoglou, that really suits players of that ilk, just based on the little bits of clips I've seen of him and the way that Ange plays with us. Hopefully it's going to be a match made in heaven, but these things, there's always question marks. But in terms of it being done, it looks like it's just a matter of time, so that's really good.
You never know. With signings, you can never guarantee that somebody's going to be a success. We are going to be keeping across Celtic's social media. You never know, maybe a deal will get confirmed while we're on here. Kevin, Bernabei obviously hopefully coming in at left back. Does Greg Taylor, I know he split opinion over the time he's been at Celtic, but performed really, really well back end of last season, I thought. Do you think he keeps his place and Bernabei is going to have a job to get in, or do you think we try and integrate Bernabei early with a view to obviously the Champions League starting in September?
Well, I think it's a case of he comes with a reputation of being someone that we want to see he will fit Ange's style of play, and it could be argued that maybe Greg Taylor doesn't really fit it as much as maybe what Bernabei could. So Bernabei, from what I've seen, is pacey, is fast, and it's something that Ange likes to incorporate in his formation. And if you have Bernabei and Jota, that is some amount of pace coming down that left wing that could terrorise defences up and down the country. But you also have to see that Greg Taylor did do well last season, so you also have to show a bit of respect to Greg Taylor, because yes, he did divide fans' opinion, but he did make the left back his own in those closing stages, and he deserves a crack at the competition for left back. And it's also good to have competition, because we can't keep having Juranovic at left back or Larsson at left back and switching between the two of them. They should be playing in their rightful positions. But I think it's a case of we shall wait and see. But with Bernabei coming on what is rumoured to be a 5-year deal, I think it just shows a real statement of intent. It's not just kind of a 3 or a 4 and let's see what happens. I think 5-year deal shows a bit of commitment on both sides, from player and club. But again, it's one of these things. It's really dragged on for a while, because there was rumours on Twitter and from people saying it's be 24 to 48 hours, and you're kind of waiting, just waiting for the phone to ping and saying welcome Bernabei or whatever, joke that they'll come out with, or updating CVs, or welcome Seagrass, or whatever it is. But I think it's a case of maybe they're waiting to do them together, and we all know who I'm speaking about there. But we shall wait and see. I'm not too nervous yet.
Still quite early in the window, isn't it?
Aye. The thing about Bernabei is that they were speculating that they were going to let him see out this ban while he's still a Lanús player.
Aye.
Before making him a Celtic player. I don't know if that's how it works, if that's allowed.
Technically speaking, it's probably not the kind of thing that you should be doing. I'm sure governing bodies would maybe frown on anything kind of deliberate like that. But I think in these situations, it's always good to make sure that all parties are happy with the parameters of the deal. And if it takes a wee bit more time to get done, that's fine. The only thing I would say is when you look at Celtic, the fact that we don't have to qualify for Champions League football is absolutely colossal in terms of the planning for the season ahead, because it gives us so much more time to bed people into the squad. There's not that sense, because like if there was Champions League qualifiers, they would probably be starting fairly imminently at this point, and you would be thinking, right, we need to get it over the line, and there would be that rush. Whereas this situation obviously gives us a lot more time to get the squad together and to maybe integrate players like Bernabei. And it might be that Greg Taylor starts off with the jersey at the start of the season, and that Bernabei comes in more gradually as he settles in, acclimates to Scottish surroundings and the weather, obviously, literally acclimatising. But I think it's going to be interesting over the course of the season to see the development as well. So there's the settling in period, and then the thing that Ange Postecoglou has done that every Celtic fan has witnessed is I don't think there's a player in the squad that hasn't got better under his stewardship. So I think that development is something that, well, a player that's coming in that's already, I would say, with all due respect to Greg Taylor, of a higher level of technical ability. If you're bringing in a player that's already got that, it's going to be interesting to see what the tactical nuances that Ange incorporates into his game, things like that. It's going to be really cool to see how he pushes on. And yeah, the team as a whole, how the axis of the team changes, having a left back that's of a step up in quality again.
Yeah. See, in terms of last season, right, you're talking about the improvement in players there working under Ange. The hit of the signings was unbelievable, and I'd be astounded if we can keep that up, because it must have been well over 90%. The players that came in.
Oh, you're so cynical, Paul.
Almost immediately hit the ground running. All right, there may be 2 or 3 really struggled to make an impact, but with all new signings, they're an unknown quantity, and it's the same for Bernabei. It's going to be interesting to see if the manager and I suppose the scouting team can keep that up and bring in players in that really hit the ground running. Kevin, today, one of the things that people are talking about, maybe being out the way, will bring forward the Bernabei announcement, is Adam Montgomery joining St Johnstone on loan, but Liam Scales went out last week and people were saying that then as well. So I don't think it's anything to do with that. I'm just wondering how many promotions for the new training kit they're going to fit in before they announce Bernabei.
It seemed to be that we're starting that with Harry Kewell's video as well, as if to say, yeah, you're wearing the new kit, as if, okay, what's the meaning behind that? But I think with Adam Montgomery going on a season-long loan to St Johnstone is something the player needs, because he's not going to get the game time here with Taylor and Bernabei possibly or potentially, vacating those slots. So I think also with Liam Scales going to Aberdeen, it's the correct exposure to first-team football. It's what we'll hopefully want them to, aspire to, and it can work, because if we see that Ryan Christie, he had a great loan spell at Aberdeen, came back and then was kind of coming into the team in drips and drabs, and then before you know it, he was a key player. And who knows, in time that might be the Liam Scales and the Adam Montgomery. But I think for this season it was the correct decision to let them go out on loan. St Johnstone will be very happy with a player of his ilk coming out. It's a financially friendly deal to them, as it is with Aberdeen going to for Scales. And I think obviously Jim Goodwin being up there, that's a big factor in Liam Scales going there. And I think it could be a match made in heaven, and I hope that they do well, because you like to see your own players do well on loan, because I think we could still see a few more players go out on loan. Maybe Ismaila Soro might go out on loan, maybe even potentially go out further. But I think certainly with them, it's the right deal for all parties in that respect.
I think there's a few things I would pick out just for what you're saying there, Kevin. And first one is Adam Montgomery. Going to be really interested to see what position he plays in, because he can play anywhere up that kind of left flank. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do with him at St Johnstone. Scales, I think I agree with you. Getting the two of them out, I think it signifies that Celtic want to take a step forward quality-wise this season. They want to raise that squad, because we've obviously had a year of developing some players that, let's be honest, they're not going to be players that are ready for exposure to Champions League football. So what we're trying to do is get the top level of the squad really ready to maybe make a fight of it properly in the group stages. And I think the third thing for me is just looking at the recruitment as a whole. I think there is a real need for Celtic to get rid of bodies as well, because everybody's focusing on the amount of bodies that we need to get through the door. So whether it be on loan deals, you mentioned Ismaila Soro there, Kevin. I think Celtic need to get rid of a lot of the players that just aren't going to feature that Ange doesn't fancy. And a lot of people just assume it's like Football Manager. You hit the offer to clubs button and then get offers back in. It's no like that. If a player's not been playing a lot of football, if there's concerns over his fitness, attitude, whatever it might be, then it's going to be, clubs are going to be averse to coming in for that. Makes a loan deal potentially, as you suggest, Kevin, more likely. But I think that's something that Celtic will be prioritising as well, as making sure that the squad doesn't become too bloated, because if you get too many cooks, then it does spoil the broth.
See, in terms of getting players out on loan, right? You've talked about players that maybe don't fit Ange's style or maybe aren't his players. Could you argue that Liam Scales was probably never an Ange signing in the first place? I think we speculated that at the time, didn't we? Anyway, moving on. Next up is the mystery man. Where is he in the world today? He's been in more holidays than the man that invented them. Kevin, it's Jota. I think he was at a music festival in Denmark or some stupid thing. When do we start worrying?
Well, I'll maybe start worrying less when he's at Calvin Harris this weekend. Like just getting paraded about there. But I don't know. I think it's one of them. Again, it comes back to, we were told it was 24 to 48 hours from reporters on Twitter, and sometimes they're very
on for about 5 weeks, isn't it?
I mean, it has been very much, it's there. Celtic are activating the clause, their intent, it's this, it's that. I mean, I think it goes back to what kind of Stuart was saying there. Celtic do have the carrot of being in the Champions League group stages, so there's not a big panic yet. And we're still very early into the groups, the transfer window. It's not even July yet. Yes, we are very close to it, but we're not in that month yet where you really do start to see the signings. So I think if we're past the end of this week and none of the signings are in, then I think we need to ask what is actually happening. Is it a contractual issue? Is it a medical issue? Probably not with Bernabei, as he's past his medical, but it's one of the longest running transfer sagas I think ever, and it's never like Celtic to kind of nail it down quick. If it's a player we really want, it's dragged out. And
to be fair, in the last maybe 12 months since Ange came in, I think they've done really well to get deals done quickly.
It's been much better. Do you remember the Martin O'Neill days where he would just deliberately wait to transfer deadline day, and then you'd be like, what's happening? Who are we getting?
That's every day. That's every transfer window I can remember just about. But you're right, Kevin, that there's no excuses, is there?
No.
We have the money, we have the security already been in the group stages, we've got the time, and I think, as I said, when Carter Vickers came in permanently, it was good to see the club getting it done early, because there's no excuses not to get it done early.
And I think, sorry, just to come in there, I think obviously with Michael Nicholson being the chief, he has a good record so far. Surely he would like to keep that up and try and keep the fans on his side, because the last one certainly wasn't on anybody's side. So I think with Michael Nicholson, if he's behind these deals in some way or shape or form, then surely he'd want to really keep the fans on side and get them going for this season. And the best way to do that would be to get one main targets in. He's got one already with Carter Vickers. Bring the next one with Jota.
I think, again, it's the having Champions League football secured. That gave Celtic the confidence to go out and spend what's big money in a defender. It's the kind of money that they didn't give Brendan Rodgers before the AEK Athens game that accelerated his exit for the club. Because my understanding of that situation is if they'd backed him and bought him a defender, whether you get to the Champions League or not, it's obviously in the lap of the gods. But I think it's one of those, if Celtic had known that they were, I mean, I know it was a Champions League qualifier that I mentioned in the context, but if Celtic had known that they were getting Champions League football, there's no questions they would have bought a defender. So it's just having the security blanket of that allows us to be proactive in the recruitment rather than reactive in the market. And that's massive for us.
Absolutely. Just want to bring in a question. It's not so much a question for Twitter, but I replied to the post I put up last night. Jerry Casey, keep telling myself that contracts and agreements expire on the 1st of July, so we need to wait till Friday for Jota. If nothing happens over the weekend, I'll start to worry. Listen, the consensus is that it's done, and it's just a matter of time. But when it drags on for this long, it's only natural that you start to wonder why. But he's not a Celtic player yet. He's still technically a Benfica player. So whenever he's finished his holidays, you would expect it to be done. But see, in terms of Jota, Kevin, he's obviously a winger, played predominantly on the left-hand side last season, but did feature on the right-hand side quite frequently towards the end of the season, where I thought he was just as good, to be fair. Do you think, even if we get Jota in, we need another winger, or do you think that'll be it in those positions?
I think in the winger department, I think a lot of it depends on how James Forrest performs this season, because
James Forrest's fitness,
being a big issue. Does he fit into an Ange style of play is still to be seen. I think the big thing for me with Forrest last year is, and the big telling point for me was when Rangers scored their winning goal in the semi-final. You had Calvin Bassey, who had just played 120 minutes on Thursday, was in the midst of playing 120 minutes and breezed past him as if he wasn't there, and Forrest was struggling. And Ange is big on fitness, and I think that was a big telling point for me that he doesn't fit the system. So if it was that if he's going to improve this season, it really does. It depends on the player. But yeah, I mean, I would like to see potentially where we could maybe bring a winger out from. To your point on whether he plays in left or right, I mean, he provided an absolutely fantastic ball for Kyogo in the game against Ross County for a superb header, and that was from the right-hand side. And I've always been a person that if you have a player, play him on his preferred side, but I think Jota has that ability that he can kind of counteract at times, and Ange likes to do that at times, and you saw that at the tail end of last season where Maeda and Jota out of nowhere would just switch after maybe 10-15 minutes just to almost, try the defence. But I think there's potential for a winger, but I think a lot of it does depend on how James Forrest performs in the early part, and if he plays a part, it could just be a deadline day signing at the end of the day.
Seeing James Forrest, I think Ange likes him, and I think he's important, and he's one of few players that have been there for a while, experienced players that know what it's like season in and season out at Celtic. But I don't think he's got the attributes that you would naturally associate with a Postecoglou team, because he's lost that pace. I mean, he is a 30-year-old winger. Very few wingers entering their 30s have still got the pace they had at 25. And I think that's a big thing. And I don't know how much he'll feature. Like, even if he's 100% fit for the majority of the season, I think he'll be in and out at best.
He's a backup player now. I think that's safe to say. Definitely under Ange Postecoglou he would be. And I think the quality of player that we've got now, James Forrest, I mean, you're mentioning his fitness there. He had back problems when he was in his early 20s, and that's something that slows you up as your career goes on anyway, let alone the sort of other injury issues that he's had over the course of time. And I think there's a few sort of aspects of his play that just kind of don't dovetail with what Ange likes his wingers to do and things like that. And yeah, I think Forrest is going to be a backup role, but as you say, Paul, the role he plays in the dressing room as almost a kind of ambassadorial sort of role in many ways, that can be really valuable as long as the player is happy in that capacity. If James Forrest's happy to get like the occasional cup game or whatever, then that's fine. But if he starts getting unhappy in that role, then that's when, if you're a sort of in the staff at Celtic in terms of recruitment ins and outs, you begin to think, right, do we try and find a situation that's better for James Forrest and better for Celtic with regards to him?
I do think he's a model professional, and I think that's, again, just in terms of being in and around the squad at the training ground, setting an example for younger players, Kevin, probably really important. We talked a lot about fringe players, or we talked a bit about fringe players. I want to bring in Barry Fern's question for Twitter, asking about, if any, what fringe players should be kept and maybe loaned out to develop. You mentioned a few earlier, Kevin, like Ryan Christie at Aberdeen. Christopher Ayer went to Kilmarnock, came back a better player. Is there anybody in the squad that you think has a future but does need to be loaned out this season?
It's very difficult to see. I mean, we do forget sometimes that we do have James McCarthy in our ranks at times, and obviously there's still debates over who signed James McCarthy. I do think there's a player there that is actually good to have as a defensive option sometimes, and I think he can just be sometimes it's just something a bit different. We're needing just someone to see a game out, even on a domestic level. But I think, with his age, I think he's happy. He's probably happy to be in an almost like what Stuart was saying, an ambassadorial role, just kind of be there. He's kind of seen and done it. He's won an FA Cup. He's played in the English Premier League.
Good
so
professional.
He's the kind of model professional, and I think he would be the same. I always slightly feel sorry for Albion Ajeti sometimes, and whether or not did he get a chance, because he came with a bit of pedigree, because obviously his goal scoring record in Basel was highly commendable. But there is a player there. Could he potentially go out on loan and then come back and be another option? He would probably be my only one that I could see. The only problem with Ajeti is he's on very hefty wages, if it's to believe, maybe in the excess of £15,000 a week. Mm-hmm. So not many clubs are going to pay that, and it's going to have to be a case of we'll pay the majority while a club plays less. But I think that is someone that you will see go out, whether it's permanent or a loan deal remains to be seen. But I think to summarise, I think it's very difficult to see anybody that comes out and goes already. I mean, I think Mikey Johnson, is forever, a case of what if, because, he gets a game, comes in, he's injured, and he's now getting to that level where he's now getting to that age, whereby he's past the stage of a young prospect. He needs to either be, getting better at his recovery, or he has to be, a couple of losses. And if it's a case of couple of losses, then I would be saying he needs to go.
No, I get that. Just on Mikey Johnson, actually. Now, I should stop breaking news or saying things that I'm hearing in your programme, Paul.
You should.
But it's just so funny. I had a couple of people saying to me the day that there's whispers of interest south of the border in Mikey Johnson for a permanent deal. If that's the case, then I think at like a couple of £1 million, I think I would maybe take that. And give him a chance, because I don't really see. I don't see a chance where he establishes himself if everyone is fit to even be in the top 3 or 4 wingers in the squad. And I think at the age he's at, you want to be getting football. And if Celtic had belief that he could eventually become that player, then I think they would be looking for a loan deal. So that's the question. Are they going to try and look for a loan situation, or maybe to ship him out permanently? On loans, Welsh might not play as much in the coming season, because there might be a few more defensive options. Obviously, Julian might be back. Whether that works as a fit or not remains to be seen. But Welsh would be the one that I would maybe look at and think, in terms of getting him out, getting him a bit of game time, I could see that being one that is of interest to Celtic. And I think another season in Scottish football, or like a championship club, if any were interested, could be beneficial to him, and it would bring his game on to be playing regularly. Actually, the championship down south would be a really good one if you could get interest for there, because if he could establish himself in any team in the championship, I think that shows that he's a decent level of player, and I think that would be a good challenge for him. And likewise, if he could play a full season of Scottish Premier League football, I still think that would be good at this stage of his development. You look at somebody a bit who has a bit more, few more seasons behind him in Anthony Ralston, and you wonder, I actually think playing less football but staying part of Angie's squad would be better for Ralston, conversely. So it's interesting. Different players, different things suit. Welsh would be the one I would look at in terms of a potential loan out, though, that could be worthy for Celtic and for him.
I think the only thing with Welsh is, if the club can get suitors for Julian, if that's what all parties want, that will determine his role in the squad. Because if Julian is going to go, he will probably stay, like you say, and be backup, play a few games, be injury cover, and still develop under Postecoglou as well. In terms of Mikey Johnson, for me, it's like sliding doors in it. Football is sliding doors, and he's had his opportunity, so many opportunities, and there was a period where he looked really, really good.
Under Brendan Rodgers,
aye, under Rodgers when he first came in, a wee bit, maybe at the very start. Was it under Lennon?
But had a great game against St Johnstone. I remember the first game of the season.
But never a run in the team, constantly injured. And then in the last couple of seasons when he's had opportunities, it has been really, really poor. So I think the opportunities have come up and they've sort of passed him by. So I think he's. I don't even think you can put him in the same category as Ralston. In that, does he go for a loan move and then come back and have a future? Because I think he's probably approaching 23, is it now? So probably best for him as well if he can go and get first team football elsewhere, because I think he's got the ability. It just hasn't happened at Celtic. Moving on then to outgoings, boys. We're talking about Josip Juranovic the last couple of weeks. Rumours have arisen from somewhere. Fabrizio Romano was probably the first person to share it. That there was interest from the Premier League and from other clubs, and then the Atletico Madrid rumour popped up the other night. Where do you stand on this, Kevin? Obviously, he's got 4 years to run on his contract. He's not even been here 12 months. I think he came in towards the end of last August. Really good last season. Was injured for a period. A few really standout performances, and I think he had a standout performance against France for Croatia recently as well. So it's not a surprise that he's on other teams' radars, but I think it would be a surprise if he was to go just a year after joining.
It would be a big surprise, and as we've spoke about in the group chat and off air, it needs to be commanding a big fee to buy out the contract essentially, and for the quality that he's shown within the side last year. I mean, it's one of them. Like, our strategy is to buy players, buy prospects, and sell them on. So effectively, this is in effect our model working perfectly, albeit it's just maybe a bit ahead of time. I think it's got to be a case of it's just maybe too soon, because obviously there's not many players that go after 1 year of being great. And as I was saying, I'm racking my brains to see who absolutely had a great season at Celtic and then went after 1 year. And I think it was maybe one of the guys said it was maybe Frimpong, but technically he was a season and a half. So I mean, it's very, very strange to see. But the thing for me was it was Fabrizio Romano, who's very, very good with his sources. He's very, very rarely wrong. So I think that's where a lot of people did get a bit panicky. But as you say, and I would like to think that we did have backup in the respect that we were looking at a right back, and do we look at someone again? But then that falters on what Ange is trying to build. Ange likes to build a team. He doesn't really strike me as a person that just likes to constantly change. He wants to have a settled team. So if you're taking Juranovic out of that, then you've got Anthony Ralston, but I think we'd all agree that probably Juranovic is a better option than Ralston, but it's good to have. So if we take that person out of the team, then we're severely downgrading that. No disrespect to Ralston there whatsoever. So if we have to do that, then we need to really have someone that's going to have the same amount of ability as Juranovic, which isn't always the case with our business model. So we need to then be sure that whoever we bring in, if it is the worst case scenario, they need to be as good, if not better, than Juranovic. But that's a gamble. So, and I think with Atletico Madrid, it's very hard because, they're a great club, playing in La Liga, it's an exciting prospect, but I just think it's just too soon. If you could give us another season, a crack at Champions League football, then one could argue he's proved all we can do here. It's very hard to kind of keep players here, and we all know that. So I think if you give us one more season, then I've got no problems with a player moving on, because that is just our business model at the end of the day.
I think what seems to be the common consensus is Celtic are going to want a Tierney fee or close to it for it to happen. So it's going to be 20 million plus. Celtic control this situation much better than they have others, because the control over the contract is there, the duration is there. So even though it's a big club after him, and I think Juranovic understands the stage in his career he's at as well. That's the impression that I get. It's not like he's clamouring to get out.
That's an important point.
We've seen in the past with some players. So I think that's a factor that's at play here. One of the things that's interesting is it seems from reports I've kind of heard, Philip, I don't know, other folk in the media or whatever, that Celtic are looking at a right back anyway. That is one of the positions that we're looking to strengthen. So if that's the case, then what I'm thinking is, how does the squad situation look? And if we're thinking about wingers and the sort of number of wingers that Celtic have available to them, does Juranovic, we've seen him play in that more attacking role. If you get a quality player in that is above Ralston, does Juranovic then sort of pivot to being an option either? Because we've seen that he can play on the left side. We've also seen that he can play in a more attacking role, So the squad depth then becomes more interesting in terms of how you deploy it. So it'll be interesting to see, because I don't think they're just targeting a right back because there might be the chance that Juranovic goes out. I think they want to strengthen that position anyway. So, and I think one thing you've seen from Ange Postecoglou as well is he likes players that not just putting square pegs in round holes, but players that can and do have the versatility to play a multitude of positions. Juranovic is one of those players. All right, you would say probably most people would say his best position is right back. And if you looked at his performance against France and Mbappe and whatever, that was very much evident. And that's why some of the vultures are now swooping, is because he's obviously shown that he can do it against the very best. And Croatia's a team that people watch, it's not like Scotland. So it's one of those things where there is the platform there for the player to accelerate his career. And another factor about the Atletico Madrid thing to consider is Sime Vršalko, who is, I think, one below him in the pecking order, if I'm right, for Croatia, has been playing fairly regularly for Atletico Madrid for a number of years. He's leaving the club this summer. So they do have a track record of working with a Croatian player in that position. And anybody that knows Diego Simeone knows that he likes, he's got a kind of fit of a template of the type of player he likes, and he likes continuity in ways. So, it's going to be interesting to watch that one. If it does happen, I don't think it'll be because the players clamouring for it or Celtic are clamouring for it. I think we have control over this situation, but Atletico Madrid come in with 25, 30 million, he's gone.
I agree. The thing on Juranovic, I disagree about the more advanced position, because when you think about that period, when you think about that period around Christmas, where we were absolutely depleted and we went to Ross County, I think the front three was Montgomery on the left, Abada through the middle, and Juranovic on the right hand side. I think the one weakness in Juranovic's game is his delivery in the final third. I think his recovery defending is excellent. He's really quick. His one-on-one defending is brilliant, as we've seen against Ryan Kent this season, a player that Celtic have problems with in one-on-one situations in the past. I think he's brilliant as a defender, but I think the one weakness in his game is when he gets in the final third and picking out a cross and finding an assist for somebody. I think that's the one area he can really, really improve. And
so you think Ange would only do that out of necessity then, aye?
Aye, absolutely, aye.
Fair enough, mate.
The one contrast, you mentioned Frimpong, Kevin, there's a few different factors with those two situations. He was one that after 18 months, he was just gone overnight.
Yeah.
But I think if a big club was in for me, not me, because obviously I'm a Celtic fan, but if I was Frimpong, at that time, I'd have been running a mile for Celtic when an offer was there, given the situation the club were in at that time. This time around with Juranovic, 26-year-old, almost in his peak, very different to Frimpong, and we're in the Champions League. He knows that he's guaranteed that platform this season to play in the Champions League, leading into the World Cup. And I think maybe a more natural juncture for him to leave Celtic is after the World Cup at the end of next season, 2 years at the club. If he has a good World Cup, and he's still got 3 years left in his contract, I think the fee can be properly high then. But we'll see how that one develops. The other thing on the agenda tonight, and we need to talk about it, not seriously, but it's one of these things, isn't it? Where
why not seriously, mate?
Because the question is, if his dad wasn't his dad, would we be talking about him coming to Celtic, Jordan Larsson?
Nepotism is as prevalent in football as any other domain.
Oh, this is Celtic, mate. I know that.
I think you were going to go there, Kev. I'll let you have first bite at this one.
I mean, I would wholeheartedly agree that we would not be talking about Jordan Larsson if it wasn't for his dad, Henrik. We would not be in this position on a Tuesday night talking about should Celtic pursue Jordan Larsson. We would not be doing that.
Spartak Moscow have released a striker. Celtic sign him.
The last Spartak Moscow striker I remember getting released was Gary O'Connor. I think was it Spartak he played, but it was one of the Moscow clubs.
Maybe Lokomotiv, I think.
I think it was Lokomotiv.
Very nice.
But I think there is a player there that that could there is a player, but he's not done anything of note to excite me to say that he would be a perfect fit for the squad. And I think you would be doing a very big disservice to two current great strikers in Giakoumakis and Kyogo. I mean, they are born match winners because they will change a game for you. And Kyogo is just something totally different, as is Giakoumakis. And I think if we're to bring Jordan Larsson into that, I don't think he's getting much games. And I know there'll be the clamour, and you'll get the whole Celtic dad kind of, he should play because he'll have his dad's genes and all this. Like, no, he won't. It's like sometimes we just need to move on from the past. Yeah, it was brilliant when we had Henrik Larsson. Everybody loves that. But we now need to look to the future, and the future is now that we have Giakoumakis and Kyogo, who I think will get plenty of goals for Celtic this season. And I just can't see where Jordan Larsson would feature. And I don't think he would fit into an Ange style of team. I honestly don't think so.
That's interesting. Why not?
Well, I think from what I've seen, I just don't think that he would fit the same way as Kyogo and Giakoumakis fitted into the team. I just don't think he would make the same runs. I think he would be quite a lazy player, I think, just from what I've seen. That's just my opinion, but I think with Giakoumakis and Kyogo, you've got two players there who are willing to fight for the ball. I just think Jordan Larsson, that is, would want it on a plate.
Careful.
You've got to be dead careful there, man.
Jordan Larsson would want it on a plate, whereas, I think, you've got two very unselfish players, but players that are willing to fight for the cause now. I just don't think Jordan Larsson, from what I've seen, fits that bill at the moment.
I had a look in Wikipedia before I came on here, right? And Jordan Larsson, I read, obviously it's Wikipedia, folk can make stuff up, but it said he was named after Michael Jordan, which is quite ironic because he's been bouncing about loads of clubs throughout his whole career. The one thing I would say about him is he's no just a striker. Like, he seems to have been deployed in the flank sometimes. I think he's played just kind of in a sort of number 10.
That's he played in midfield recently when he was on loan.
I didn't see that much about the loan spell, but gone back to the kind of early stages of his career, I think he was, unlike his dad, who was a striker out and out, then I think he can sort of flit about a few different positions. Sometimes there's the thing where you don't want the name Larsson to be associated with any negativity whatsoever with Celtic. I thought this, remember back in the days when Henrik was getting linked with the manager's job, I thought, don't come in and be rubbish, man. You know what I mean? Like,
worst
it was
idea
like,
in the world.
You do not want that to happen because, he is the kind of guy that it's very feasible to think that there will be like a situation where Henrik Larsson does maybe come over and have some role at Celtic. I hope it's not as the manager, and I hope it's maybe the kind of role where it's kind of on the quiet and there's enough there. If you've got Jordan Larsson coming in, though, automatically the scrutiny in that kid is going to be grossly unfair, And I think Ange Postecoglou, I think the recruitment team at Celtic, I think everyone will have common sense. It's not like we're chasing money, chasing publicity, chasing anything like that. We don't need any of that. That seems like more a move that some other clubs might be looking for, something that's going to capture the eye, capture the attention. There's no doubt that it would be like a proper attention-grabbing signing, but it would be unfair on Jordan Larsson to put the burden of expectations on his shoulders like that. And I think the idea of someone called Larsson coming in to be a squad player, if it would be different if we were in a different situation in terms of the quality of our team, and if he was a slightly better player, to be honest, then I think it would maybe be a different discussion. But you can't put that on him, and I think Celtic have the common sense to steer well clear.
I think so too. I think, again, since Ange came in, we've recruited very, very sensibly, and the one box that any player Celtic sign has to tick is that they fit what the manager wants to do, and nothing else matters. Least of all who your dad is, but it is that way in it. It's like some people just don't want it at all. And sure, I disagree that and we're going to diverge away here. But I don't think Henrik Larsson should ever have any role at Celtic, because I think his legacy should just remain untouched. It can be better, that can be improved. It should just be
at most take over from Roy Aitken as an ambassador, and that would be it.
Aye, but that's what I mean. Like something just like behind closed doors kind of role.
Just so we can see him more often.
Aye, exactly.
The corporate hospitality, make millions.
Aye, but no, on Jordan Larsson, there is a bit of me that again, if you disregard the fact that every player must fit what the manager wants to do, which of course we can't, I think it'd be cool, because I mean, think about the shirt sales, and if he was happy to play as a third choice striker, knowing that's just where he would be because of where he's at in his career, then fine. But I totally agree that it's not going to happen. It shouldn't happen, and I agree with Stuart that there'd be unfair hype and attention around him, and he would constantly get compared, regardless of whether he was a squad player or not, and it's just unfair, isn't it?
Aye, it's no fair. Realise we're kind of heading towards stoppage time here. Is it all right if I bring up one of the things that I kind of wanted to chat about, just in terms of things?
Of course, we're well into added time, but that's an anti-Ralston at Ross County here.
Excellent. Right, so Tom Roderick's obviously left the club, right? Do we need to replace him, or do we have the players in the squad already there that can do maybe not the exact same job, because he was brilliant at the job that he did, but I think Matt O'Reilly's got a bit of that ability going on. I think Turnbull could easily play in the position and has sort of, it's the right foot, but he's got similar ability with the right foot to Roger Cudwy's left foot. Do we have the players already there, or should we be targeting a player to replace him as another member of the squad?
I think Matt O'Reilly is the natural replacement for Vogic. I do think, and something we've not had time to come to tonight, is that there is a gap in midfield, and we've been linked to Vinicius Souza, is that?
That's right, yeah.
The City group, maybe more a defensive type. I think we need more physicality in midfield, so that's not somebody to replace Vogic per se. I think O'Reilly does that, but I think having someone, particularly for the Champions League, almost like a Rodri type player, although I know that we won't get anyone anywhere near that calibre, but the same style of job that he does for Man City. He's got a bit of physicality, but he can still play. He still starts attacks. I think we need someone like that in there, and that might free up Callum McGregor to play one forward. I think David Turnbull is a really good player, but whether he can straight away adapt to playing in the Champions League, I would doubt. And what the starting three is going to be in the Champions League, I don't know, but I think it might have a better balance if we can bring someone like him in, move McGregor up, want to play alongside O'Reilly. So to answer your question, I think O'Reilly's the replacement. I don't think we need to buy another Tom Rogic per se, but there is a gap in midfield that we need to fill.
What about you, Kev? Where do you stand?
Yeah, I think I'm going to have to agree with Paul there. I think, if we were looking at it, with hindsight, Matt O'Reilly was probably bought because the club knew that Tom Rogic was leaving, so it was. That
sounds very un-Celtic. Planning ahead.
Give them a wee bit of leeway, being proactive. I think they knew that they had a player there that were scouting for a while, to be believed. So I think the player does fit the mould of what Ange wants, and I think he's a slightly fitter version of a Tom Rogic, and because Tom Rogic was very much a 60-minute player, he did turn into an 80-minute player under Ange Postecoglou. But I think with O'Reilly, I think I'm going to be very interested to see how he does on a European level, because he does. We can't really go against what we saw against Bodo. I think David Turnbull. I'm not going to say the jury's still out, but it's more that, well, can he perform in the big games? Because I think he does go into hiding a little bit, when it's a bigger game. So I would like to see him maybe come out of his shell a little bit on a more better domestic level as well as a European level. So I think, no, we don't really need to strengthen there. I think we should maybe strengthen on the possibility that maybe a right back might go in the summer, as well as maybe getting a winger. And I think if we can get that, and I think we've got a complete squad there.
See, another thing that I think comes into that is pace of the game.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering, I'm actually quite excited to see Turnbull in a European style situation, less of an away game, even though under Ange Postecoglou we seem to play the exact same way away from home as we do at home. The approach doesn't change, and it's not like Brendan Rodgers counter press at the Parc des Princes either. It's like there's a bit of logic involved in it. But when I look at Turnbull's game, I think it could be hit or miss, but there's elements of, one of those players that can just control the tempo through their technical ability and calm things down. Like, he looks like the kind of player that could maybe do that in the European stage for me. But I think you're absolutely bang on, Kevin. It's going to come down to how he can adapt to lifting his level. I don't know if it's like focus or concentration even, or I mean, sometimes we forget football players are human. Is it just like maybe a shyness, like a slight inhibition in the bigger games or the bigger level? But I'm looking forward to seeing if he can push that on, because he is still like a fairly young player. So it's going to, but I think his game might be tailor-made for Champions League football if Celtic can get the stranglehold. And I think he could be an important player in helping us to do that if we manage to impose ourselves on games, as I'm hoping we're going to be able to. So that's just one thing. I've had a couple of questions in, by the way. I don't know if you've got any sort of leftover for the fans, mate. You want to leave them for another time, or what you think?
Possibly. I want to say something on Turnbull there. I'm just interested to see how much he's going to feature in Champions League, because if we bring someone in, as I just said there, if we bring someone in, is it going to be in a sort of sixth position where McGregor can move up, and then does that three become him, O'Reilly, and whoever the new signing would be?
So you think O'Reilly's the cert? You think O'Reilly's the certainty to start then?
Over Turnbull?
Aye, definitely.
I would, in the Champions League, I would say so. I think David Turnbull right now is excellent domestically for Celtic. The only question mark he would leave is that he's maybe yet to do it in a game against Rangers, right? But I think right now he's in that space where, and we've seen plenty of examples of players like this at Celtic over the years, who he's like far too good to play for anybody else in Scotland. And so in 90% of Celtic's league games, he's excellent. And he's a real asset for us. The question for him is, can he just make that step up? Can he make the improvements in the areas that he needs to go and make an impact at Champions League level? But that's not just him. That's the case for all of these players, because just about none of them, maybe McGregor and Forrest, the exceptions, have played in the Champions League for Celtic. There's a lot of young guys in there, so they all have a step up to make, and it's going to be a huge challenge for us, but it's a very exciting one. Stuart, we've got 2 minutes.
Right, okay. Right, okay. Well, I'll go with one sort of main one that's kind of come through. Is it all right if it's a two-parter, or are we not allowed that?
Novice, I'm already covered.
No, that's fine. If Jota, it's Alex who's writing to us here, says if Jota isn't signed, then what's the plan B? Do we have one?
I don't think
almost certainly not.
Yeah.
Aye.
Almost certainly not. We're too far gone. It's a done deal.
Oh, fair enough.
Deal, we just don't know it yet.
You're going to fling that at me all year, mate. I can tell. Right, and he also says, my view is we need depth in midfield, which we've kind of been speaking about. He says, especially with Tam and Beaton moving on. Looks like Vinicius Souza is obviously a subject of interest. Do you think that that's a position we really need to get a top level player in to do that role? Because I think we can get a better version of Beaton, and I think that's going to dictate quite a lot what the ceiling of our European ambitions are going to be. That's what that position is vital for me.
I think we do. I think we do need another player in there. We kind of covered it on the last question there when we're talking about Turnbull and who is the natural replacement for Vogic. We did actually get a question about Souza tonight, and it was, should Celtic use the loan system if we can't, because they're talking £8 million apparently for a permanent transfer, which is getting towards the top end of what you would think Celtic would be willing to pay. So would you be happy to loan him for a year if that's all we can get? And we'd be here all night debating that. We've used the loan system really well, obviously with Carter Vickers and Jota, but they both included options to buy at the end.
Well, that's the key for me to whether you do the deal or not. And actually, I think that in a way is an ideal scenario for Celtic, because
Try before you buy in it.
Try before you buy. Cameron Carter-Vickers, you were secure making the investment because you knew exactly what you were getting. And that's same with Jota. So I think that factor is why we can go into both of those transfers. And even though the outlay is considerable, you can think, right, we kind of know what we're getting here. If you're asking us to pay $8 million just off the shelf, I don't think you do that.
Tall order. Kevin, briefly finishes off, mate, just on your thoughts in midfield.
I think, we seem to forget that also we do have another Japanese boy in Ideguchi who's not really featured much.
Exactly.
So I'd like to see what he can provide to the squad, because Ange has brought him in for a reason, and I don't think he brought him in to just sit about and warm up the bench. So I think we maybe have to give him some credit here. He maybe didn't get the chances that maybe were afforded to Maeda and Hatate. I think Hatate and Maeda were quite lucky and they hit the ground running a wee bit quicker than maybe did. And Ideguchi got that bad injury at Alloa, kept him out for a number of weeks. So I think, as much as, Vinicius Souza, there's quality there. I think, let's see what maybe Ideguchi can do, and, let's maybe keep Souza in the back burner and maybe use the loan system, because we know that Ideguchi's there permanently. And we do have Vinicius Souza as a possible, subject of interest. But from what I'm hearing about Souza, it's as if he's seeing what his options are, and you're thinking, well, if a player's want to do that, is his heart really in it? So then,
will Ange be having that as well? That's the question.
And exactly. There you go. So I think you really need to think, well, we've got a player in Ideguchi there. He's came in. Let's give the boy a chance, because he's not had one yet.
Ideguchi has legendary hair, by the way. Can I just say, I love that hairdo. And I think what's going to be really interesting, just finally, in the Japanese players is, giving them a summer off. You know what I mean? A wee bit of time for convalescence, rest and recuperation. That's going to be vital. And this season's going to be weird anyway, because you're going to have the World Cup sandwiched in the middle, And for players that are off the World Cup, I think the pacing of the season is going to be really, really strange, because you've got a giant gap. And it's basically going to be like 2 half seasons, isn't it? So this is going to be another season, a bit like the COVID season, requiring an asterisk, because it's not going to be like any other season that's been before. And hopefully there's no other Winter World Cup, so it'll not happen again.
Aye, absolutely. There you go. That's turned into an hour-long special for you tonight. Like the video, comment with your own thoughts on everything we've discussed below. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and we'll see you soon. Cheers.